It's exactly 1:30 on Friday the 11th of November, and we've just left home on our way to the Isle of Skye. We've not been to the Isle of Skye properly before. We've driven across it a couple of times, but we've never actually stayed there. We booked a cottage on the southeast face of Skye, and yeah, we've got a couple of weeks there. So we're going to go exploring, see some of the wild, rugged countryside there. There's a lot of rocky mountains and cliffs, a spectacular coastline everywhere, a little bit of woodland which we should explore. There are things like otters and white-tailed sea eagles and all sorts of other exciting wildlife things to find, so we're keeping everything crossed. We're going to stop off at Preston on the way just to make the journey a bit easier. And yeah, so we'll get there sometime tomorrow evening. Exciting! Yay! We're off away! We go! We've arrived at last, having passed through all kinds of weather, from glorious sun to torrential rain as we drove through Loch Lomond area and then up towards Fort William and then across eventually to the Isle of Skye. We arrived in the dark and had no idea, well, not very much of an idea what we were coming to, and then this morning pulled the curtains and were greeted with the most fabulous sunrise over the Sound of Sleat, which is just literally metres down from our cottage. We're just going to go out and about now and have a little wander and explore the local area before we look any further. What a first day we've had so far. We got up quite early to a spectacular landscape and wandered down to the nearest bit of water to us, which is just below an island called the Isle of Skye. And we walked along the coast and we saw lots of rock pipits, which I've seen before but not in so many numbers. Beautiful grey wagtail and a few waders and some ducks. And then as we were walking back up towards the house, not one but two white-tailed eagles just cruising around in the air above us, and they kind of followed us all the way as we walked back to our cottage, which is amazing. This afternoon we've driven about 15 minutes across the little bit of Skye that we're based on to the other side, which is a little tiny village called Ord, which is sort of catching a bit of a sunset. It's beautiful. It's Monday morning and it's very grey, but it's nice. The weather forecast says it's supposed to be raining, but it isn't, so hey, we're making the most of it. We just went for a little trek out the back of the cottage over some sort of boggy, marshy, heathlandy hills, which was tricky walking, quite vigorous and a bit wet. We saw a couple of snipe just hiding in the heather, and some sheep and some cows. It was a bit like being at Llanglunie Mountain back home, and we kind of trekked our way back. We're just walking down now towards the water again. We just passed a kind of little roving feeding flock with a robin and some great tits and a little wren who was being very acrobatic and very difficult to capture. We heard some curlews just now down by the sound of Sleat, so we're just going to walk back down and see if we can see anything like that. It's another sunny day and we've driven out to probably the nearest big town to where we're staying, which is called Broadford. I say big town, it's got a co-op, and yeah, we don't really know the town at all, so we're just wandering. We've walked out to a point, like a little pier out on one side of the bay, and there are lots of cormorants and quite a lot of little garden birds and stuff, because there's quite a few houses around, which is quite nice, a bit of a change. And yeah, we're just meandering, seeing what we can see. There are mountains with snow on in the distance, which is very exciting. Hoping we might get to see a bit more snow closer to hand at the weekend, because it's getting a bit colder. But today is glorious.
This is the simplest of our 5 platonic solids.
We're just sitting in a hide at a place called Kylerhea, which is on the same peninsula that our cottage is on, but just a bit further north, towards the bridge to the mainland. And it's at a place where there's a very narrow channel of water between Skye and the mainland, and it's allegedly a great space for otters, but surprise, surprise, we haven't seen any. We have seen a number of small white diving birds that have been just sort of floating on the water, and they're just too far away to be able to identify, so I've taken a load of photos to see if I can enlarge them when we get home on the laptop and see if we can figure out what they are. At the moment, I've not really got much of an idea. It's spectacular scenery, being able to see both sides of the channel. There's a mysterious looking little kind of lighthouse sort of building, which I'm quite curious about. But yeah, a bit quiet on the otter front. Today we've come on an interesting drive. We went to Broadford on the way to go in co-op, exciting times. And then we headed down this B road, the B83, and drove quite a long way, about 9-10 miles I think, along the side of a huge loch that opens out into the sea, and ended up in a little village called Elgol. Turned around, it was raining at the time, and we did see a load of redwings, which was quite exciting. And then we've driven part way back, and now we found this little walk right in the middle of the Strathaird peninsula, which is a little track that leads sort of from one side of the peninsula to a place called Kylerhea, I think, on the other side. It's an amazing road. It's like kind of paved, but all very higgledy-piggledy. I think it's been here for many centuries. It's, yeah, interesting weather. Could rain at any moment. We managed to see some stone chats, yay, which is bird number 53, I think, on our list. Don't know if we're going to make it all the way along this path. And there were a couple of other sort of parking spaces on the way that we thought we might stop at on the way back next to the loch. So we'll see what we can see.
Come to beautiful Scotland, where even the sheep know how to pew safely, socially distant.
Today is Saturday. Yesterday we had a bit of a quiet day at home because it was raining most of the day. Mum and I did a little bit of creative pursuits while Dad watched some snooker, and it was just a very relaxing time. We did manage to glimpse at least four otters from our living room window down in the bay, which was amazing. Today is beautiful. It's very sunny, quite warm. Bit of a chill in the air, but considering it's the middle of November. And we've come to Kyleakin, which is right near the Skye Bridge, and there's a castle here that we're going to go and investigate. We've just walked up a little hill to the War Memorial here, and we're just taking the view before we trek off towards the castle.
This is what's left of Castle Moyle, which was the home of the Mackinnon clan. Legend has it that it was funded by a Norwegian princess who went by the rather dashing name of Saucy Mary, and she married into the clan, and as far as we know they lived there happily ever after. The last resident, as far as we know, of this castle was Neil, who lived with his Aunt Jane, and after him apparently the castle just went to rack and ruin, which is a shame. Recently the lightning took one of the towers, and now the Highland Project, I think it's the Highland Project, has taken it on, and they're going to keep it as safe as possible to make sure that there's still something for future generations to look at. It's an interesting place and a lovely position overlooking the estuary.
It's Monday today, the second Monday, and yesterday was Dad's birthday. It was a bit of a kind of rainy morning, so we spent a restful day at the house, and Dad got to watch a bit of snooker, which is what he would love to do on his birthday. And then in the afternoon, the weather picked up a little bit, so we walked along to the pub at the other end of the village, and got some amazing views of the snowy mountains in the distance, and spent a restful hour or so in a very peaceful pub. And the weather was a lot better when we came back, so that was lucky. Today we've got up and we're planning a little adventure to somewhere called the Fairy Pools, which is one of the sort of top things to do on Skye. Hopefully it won't be too busy today because it's a Monday in November, so it should be fairly quiet. The weather is considerably better today, it's very sunny, and we're looking forward to a spectacular drive to the west side of the island. Fairy Pools was interesting. I wouldn't say it was as breathtaking as I thought it might be. I think perhaps it's kind of one of those like hyped up areas of the island, and consequently a lot of people go there. So the footpath was very worn. There were quite a lot of people there. There were little JCBs, they're kind of extending the path, so that kind of took away a bit of the magic. But the waterfalls were spectacular. Then as we were walking back to the car, we managed to see a golden eagle which flew up above the forest. Very exciting. I got a little bit of shaky footage. And then shortly after, we saw a white-tailed eagle in pretty much the same place, which was incredible. And then we drove on to Talisker, which is right on the west coast, and from the beach there you could actually see the Hebrides, which was lovely, off in the misty distance. There were some incredibly brave surfers, which, I mean, it was very, very cold and the wind was blowing incredibly strongly, but they seemed to be really loving it. It did make for very picturesque scenery with all the wind blowing the surf. And there's a beautiful waterfall which comes down onto Talisker Beach. Not too many birds about. We did see some oyster catchers, and there were lots of farm stock like cattle and sheep, home from home. But it was a lovely walk and well worth the expedition. Today we're just going to stay a little bit more local. We're going back to Broadford Bay. We've discovered a little forest next to Broadford Bay, so we're going to go and investigate that and just see where we end up. Well, we had a bit of a change of plan. We drove to Broadford and it was so lovely and sunny and frosty, and we got tempted to pull up again on Waterloo Road, which is like a little track along the side of the bay, and walked along about a mile and saw some little waders, some ring plovers and dunlin, lots of curlew, and got to the end and looked out towards sort of like Breakish Way, and we looked out a bit further along the coast and saw some otters just swimming around on the edge of the water, which was really nice to get some reasonable views of those. Then we drove on to Broadford Forest, where we'd intended to walk, and it started to rain. So we had our lunch in the car, decided to sort of call it a day there, and drove down instead through the Sleat peninsula past where we're staying, down towards Armadale, and that's where we are at the moment, just before we get to Armadale. And I've just had an amazing view of a little Great Northern Diver floating in the bay here, and some fantastic views across to Scotland mainland. We're going to take a loop road called the Ord Loop, and it goes through some sort of lowish kind of heathland area out to the coast on the other side of the peninsula and then back again. Well, that was a fantastic, spontaneous course change. We did the Ord Loop over the mountain and down to a few villages on the west coast of Sleat, and including Ord. Some amazing views of the Kyleakin Mountains in the distance, and across the sea we saw a bit of a sunset. Amazing little view of a diver with a fish. It was just trying desperately to eat the fish, and kept turning over and dipping it back in the sea. I'm not sure what it was doing, but it was having a busy time. We also ended up visiting Dunscaith Castle, which we just discovered, and you can trek out across the bog and around the shore and get to the very ruined castle, which, yeah, seems to be fairly typical. There are quite a few of these on Skye that we've seen now. the second Friday, which is our last full day, which is very sad, but we're very happy and grateful to have been able to have 2 weeks here. It's been amazing. The last couple of days have been a bit hit or miss weather-wise. On Wednesday we drove out to Portree, but it was raining most of the time. We were going to go and see the Old Man of Storr, which is this big rock formation just north of Portree, but no, the weather was just too iffy and we didn't fancy trying to climb the hill and weren't sure if we'd be able to see it because there was a lot of mist about. Yesterday was pretty rainy until the afternoon, and then it wasn't so bad. So we snuck out for a little walk in forest just the other side of Broadford, which was very peaceful. Saw some amazing views across the water between Skye and the mainland. Then today was supposed to be terrible weather, but it was actually really sunny most of the day. It was very windy. There were a few rainbows about, little showers here and there. I think it's started to rain again now. But we drove up to Loch Kylerhea, which is just above Broadford. We went there last week and we thought we'd just revisit because it was pretty much twilight when we were there last time, so we wanted to see it in the daylight. Look for some water birds, which we didn't see any of, but lots of nice views of the mountains up there and this old church with its graveyard, which is really beautiful. We drove back down to Broadford to probably our favourite spot, which is Waterloo Road, and you can just walk along past lots of holiday cottages and look out over the kind of, I don't know what it would be, rocks and grassland and beach. And we saw a lovely dipper, which I glimpsed a dipper yesterday, but got a much better view today. And yeah, just really took in the last chance views of the mountains and the sea and the lochs. All wonderful. We're already planning next year. We just need to consolidate our booking. Can't wait to come again. Skye is beautiful. Loads of birds. We managed to see 69 bird species, hoping to get another one on the way home. I haven't seen a jay, so we might get one of those on our long 11.5-hour journey back to Wales tomorrow. Anyway, thanks for watching if you made it this far. We loved making this video, and I'll see you again next time.